My goal today is to walk you through this concept of Cloud Scouts, a new service from SOUTHWORKS that we've been working on over the last year or so. And the idea is to formally introduce it today to you for the first time, right? So I will start with some history. Like in the beginning there was nothing and so on. But when we started writing code in the early days, debugging and logging and all those practices fall into the developer, right? Like as a developer, you were the one responsible for maintaining the software that you built. And the idea was that, you needed better telemetry, better things for you to debug the code that you have written. Over time, we came to this concept of SRE. Books has been written about it, a lot of products and things happened, and it became its own practice, right? We have a lot of tools, a lot of data collection points, a lot of services, and a lot of things that create this as a standalone discipline. So we have this team that it's now responsible for creating alerts and monitoring how applications are doing and informing the rest of the organization why do we have a downtime and get somebody to fix it. But with this evolution and all this tooling and all this data that we have nowadays, it became its own silo, right? Like a silo in which people would look at the metrics, would look at their own dashboards, and then something happens and the ticket battle begins. What do we mean by this? It's basically you get an alert. That alert is something is broken. You look at the elevated error rate. You say but all services show healthy and probably it's a development thing. So I will open up a ticket, send it somewhere, somebody will prioritize it, and hopefully it will get resolved by somebody that knows what's going on. It's not, the containers, it's not the cluster, it's not the network, it's something within the app. So the famous, it's a bug, it's a feature, whatever. And this, whatever is running inside the infrastructure, it's a black box. It's, I just, take care of containers. And I found myself saying that many times where I was like, whatever you are running, as long as it's on a container, we can make it scale, we can deploy it everywhere, we can build those things. But then there is a reality, right? Then there is why the app is not working, why the system is not responding, why are we getting an elevated error rate? And our conclusion, right, was that it isn't one or the other. It's not let's take back everything that developers used to do out of SRE and bring it back. But to come up with this concept of somebody that knows both how the app is built, what's the goal, what's the business, and try to close the gap between that context so we are not exchanging tickets. We created this concept of Cloud Scouts that it's heavily inspired in the latest and greatest trend, even though Palantir has been doing it for a couple of years now, and OpenAI, of the forward deployed engineer, right? The idea is that we have somebody from our team that joins our customers and works the way we used to work with our customers, embedded on their teams, looking at the problems and trying to close the gap by being fluent in both the product, what is that we are building, what are the business requirements and why things are built the way they are, and the platform. We are running Kubernetes, we are using containers, we are syndicating logs here, there, these are the alerts and how the way it works. The idea is that this Cloud Scout, it's a hands-on support, it's not a consultant, it's more like hands-on support that knows both worlds and tries to close the gap in a constructive way by not saying you should be doing this, go ahead and do it, right? Go ahead and close that gap. It's not meant to replace SRE, it's not meant to replace the product engineering nor the platform. It's a way to have somebody that talks to both. So with that introduction, I will go to what it is. And I use the forward deployed senior software engineer embedded inside the product team to continuously observe, build, and improve the reliability layer of the stack, which doesn't mean it's SRE. It's in between SRE and the product, sharing that context. We understood, as with AI, that the most important thing when it comes to running these systems and running these platforms is understanding the full context, because there are a lot of things that we do as developers by design to create these systems. We put business rules, we put things that oftentimes, come later to bite us when we are running the thing. But this idea sits in between all of them to work with all of them, right? To be actively engaged in a daily basis with the software engineers writing the code, the platform engineers running the actual infrastructure, and the software architect that it's like, balancing in between these worlds. So what we are after and what we have achieved by introducing this to some of our first pilot customers is going from these, dashboards. We build dashboards, we have numbers, we have all of it, to have something that you can really, by using AI and other tools, and I'll show an example later on, to have the real diagnostics, not just like a bunch of screens that shows numbers and things, so we can proactively detect and fix issues as they happen. The difference between being on call, and this has been something that we have experienced running systems for our customers, when you get an issue, that issue, it's an elevated error rate on those, errors that we are all familiar with, and all of a sudden it's like, no, but that's a bug on the source code. And we need to wake up another developer or somebody else to go look into the code, to go fix that code, because it's not a platform issue. And the idea of, by leveraging AI and, all these concept of agents and all the tools that are available, going from monitoring to building actual companions that do the monitoring for you.
Johnny?
Yeah.
Guy Courier, Futurum Group. Is this a shift in SOUTHWORKS thinking that led to the Scout, or is it something that the Scout leads organizations to do?
So it's an interesting thing. I think it's a combination of our own experience doing this and a gap that we observed while working with our customers in all the different silos at the same time. So we have a concept that we call the dev crew that sits with the SREs and work and do services on that front. We have our concept of fire teams that work on migrations on building these apps. And we do consulting in the traditional sense, like this is how the architecture should look like. But when all was running, we found this connection even with our own teams. So we were operating something, and eventually somebody will go and say, hey, this is a bug on the product. So we understood that there has to be somebody there doing this, communication and fast prototyping and showing the art of possible hands-on, not a consulting like, hey, here is my PowerPoint deck, this is what needs to happen, but somebody that is actually capable of writing that code and say like, hey, this is what we can do. Some of the teams will take it and evolve it, but lead the prototyping and the, I would say, innovation from the ground. No longer like a thing, because there is another thing that we have observed with AI. The number of lines of code that we write every day as, actually writing code has decreased. We rely on all these AI tools and stuff like that. So we need somebody that is capable of prototyping fast. And it was kind of a mind change, if you will, that there is a lot of, I would say, you treat AI as something really, you are against it or with it, right? So you have people that says like, no, all of it, nothing works, like ChatGPT is great, but when you try to take it to reality, it won't work. And then you have people that says like, is a solution to world peace. It can do everything, it will do everything. Like we have a bug, we have AI. And we were like, the technology is almost there. I wouldn't say like it's done, but it's capable of helping a human in that loop to really accelerate the prototyping process. Therefore, we said like, hey, we spend a lot of time working with our customers from the consulting side, trying to craft these roadmaps. This is what's going to happen. And as with everything, there is a big quota of trust and a leap of faith that you need to take when you say like, okay, I'm going to embark myself on this project. So we are trying to change that by bringing someone on the ground that works with the team and says, hey, here is the prototype I built, it's working. We can now chat how we want to iterate this, but it's no longer like, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Give me $1 million, 12 months, and I will come back with the solution for all your problems.
I was going to wait a little longer, but he opened Pandora's box. So you had a Venn diagram of engineering SRE, and Cloud Scout would be in the middle, but isn't that the point of SLOs and SLIs? The contract, but the proper way to run SRE is you take the business, you take the sort of the SRE, you build a contract around SLOs and SLIs, and so I don't know, it's not a clear picture if I understand SRE the way I understand it.
So that's a great question, and you are right. But one of the things that we have seen from working with these organizations that have matured enough to say, hey, we have contracts and we have somebody that is orchestrating those agreements in between the teams, it's that their position, like the internal position of these groups, whether it's like the product teams or the platform teams, is to build defensive barriers to say it wasn't me, right? So when you are trying to say, hey, we are noticing something, no, it wasn't me, like my logs are clean, my alarm. So the role of the scout, ideally, is to look at the root of the problems and try to create a fix. And I will show using AI and MCP servers, and it gets really, really interesting in such a way that it won't happen again, right? It's an attack rather than a defense of like, okay, we'll create this barrier here. It's like, how do we fix the problem from the root, rather than creating new policies and new agreements in between us to say whose fault was that.
But I mean, not to belabor it, but that's the whole point of an SLI is that there is no fault in the contract. It is abstracted away by definition.
Well, that's the thing.
Ask another question. So it seems to me like you're probably not focused on legacy software, right?
How so?
Well, like a banking application, it seemed to me it would be very hard to sort of contract in somebody who has to fit into something like Capital One, which has, at probably now 5,000, but used to have 20,000 Java developers, and then say, okay, we're going to be that intermediate, like where our day job is going to be coding banking transaction tier 0 applications, but we're also going to figure out the infrastructure. Like, I don't think you can find those kind of people.
So I would say that the scouts are scarce because who do we put in that role are people with specific domain expertise. And you will see from one of the examples that I brought that you need to know the industry. So if it's banking, is somebody that has to have the banking experience and has grown their career in both ways. But we prioritize the domain, the subject matter expertise when it comes to the domain, because otherwise it will be really hard to plug and play. Because one key component to that would be the fact that you need to also understand the business. In those discussions, when we are doing this, you have a product manager that comes with, hey, this is what we are trying to achieve for our customers, right? Then you have the developer that it's focused on how do we make these transactions, and then you have the 3949 promise that somebody else is taking care of. So dealing with that requires higher seniority and domain expertise, because you cannot parachute into a bank if your whole experience has been, I don't know, writing
retail, whatever,
retail or media or something else. So it's it's a really interesting senior profile, and it's meant to wear many hats and should have had that experience of wearing those hats. Otherwise, it would be impossible to really capitalize on the business knowledge and knowing what it takes to work on a tier 0 transaction application. Good? Okay. So what do we use? We use MCP servers, we use copilots, we create custom agents to find patterns and try to surface the decision to a human in the loop, right? We don't, based on our experience, and hopefully the technology will evolve over time, we don't trust 100% the solution to the AI. It's not like, hey, now I have my agent, it's auto-healing. We'll look into MCP servers and fix everything and anything for me. It's more, these are the patterns that I'm seeing. How about we take a look at this, and that, and it becomes an interactive conversation with the agents and so on. So the idea is that this Scout turns telemetry into action.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This might be a really dumb question, but are Scouts human?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yes. And it's a great question because everybody talks about agents, and it might have been like the name I chose for agents, but it's not. It's a human.
All right, just making sure.
That works with it's a senior engineer and an automation companion. Okay. That was good. And the idea is that, again, it's embedded with the product and the platform teams on these daily and weekly things. It becomes part of the rituals of the teams. It's really embedded and spends time with our customers. It, again, as I was saying before, it's not trust me, it's like I'm looking at what you are doing. These are the ideas that come to mind, and this is what I could prototype that solves part of that problem. It's KPI driven. We try to figure out, where are the issues, whether it's like a signal versus noise, like I'm getting tons of alerts, so nothing is important anymore, or whether it's the reliability or the time to resolution and how that works. And, we believe that it takes up to 3 months to get embedded into the customer. And after that, if our customers don't see value, we open up to say like, okay, that's fine. Now we cancel and move on. It's our take on software, on the forward deployed engineering for SRE. As to your question, it's a human that sits at the keyboard writing code that talks with an agent that drives or writes the MCP servers to find patterns, draft and proposes fixes, and then becomes the final decision maker, right? This was what I meant by not delegating 100% to the AI. But one of the things that it's interesting about this is that we try to have that idea of end-to-end look, right? So there might be issues, there might be drifts, there might be bugs, but what's the actual problem takes more than an alert on Slack on a log. And I'll show that in a minute. But the idea is...
This is Tony with Tectone. Real quick, on that last bit, you mentioned that you have the human agent in there, then you have the AI that's analyzing and kind of assisting you, and then it's making determinations. Is there some second level of human interaction so you can verify things are being done the way you want them before it actually applies these fixes?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. The idea is that we use the AI companions to figure out the root cause, to communicate the root cause, to go deeper than the actual error, like, hey, I don't know, an HTTP request payload is bigger than supported.
Yeah. Whatever the scenario.
Whatever the scenario. So you go down, you figure out, you do the RCA with AI, and then we craft the pull request, and then the final approval and maybe the tweaking on how the issue is fixed, it's run by a human.
Okay, so that closes that loop.
Yes, and the idea is that we generate and I'll show this on my example. Sorry. We generate knowledge as we go. This means that we want to move away from things are happening magically. Like, hey, here is a fix for a problem you didn't know you had,
Right.
or where this fix is coming from, or who changed that. So we also rely on the AI a lot of the, I would say, documentation process. Why things are changed, where it come from, like, build me an RSA, we'll review it if it makes sense, how it's working, and so on and so forth. But have that process with a proper human in the loop that, works as a fail switch that can say, hold all this, start over, and I'll show an example in a minute. But the idea is to document issues that in such way that both sides, whether it's SRE or product, can understand that a tweak on the source code, impacted beyond what you thought, right? Like you are missing a validation on a payload size when uploading a file. Well, that trigger a bunch of errors and a bunch of alerts and things like that, and all that because of a business requirement that wasn't met. And those sort of deeper dive analysis that you can do when you have the compute power to do so.
And I assume there's going to be some sort of an audit trail, logging,
Yes.
et cetera. You can deep dive if you need to.
Exactly.
Now, SouthWorks typically embeds someone in the product team, the client product team, isn't that right? Yeah.
Yes.
So when I see product team there, I ask myself, who? Is that the embed, or is that
No.
the client product team?
It's a client product team. So we want to surface, like, our product teams, we call it fire teams, the ones we do the migrations and, re-architecting and modernization of the applications, are built to do things and move on. We don't want to put our customers on a endless retainer for doing that. We might do managed services to, evolve the platform, but all the work that we do on the product side and the way our customers come to us, it's because our ability to, build, document, and move on. So the idea is that we share that knowledge back to the customer product team so they know where it's coming from, and closes the loop and enriches the ultimate owner that are they. Them.
Well, that's the top part. That's the knowledge. I'm looking down here and seeing that the automation is built,
Yeah.
and then the product team adopts.
Yeah.
But maybe they don't want to adopt.
Yeah. That's how the knowledge comes back to the scout, because there might be things that they say like, no, we don't want to, because, I don't know, there is something that goes against our policies, or there is a feature we are working on that goes against these, and things that we might not know. That's how why the knowledge, it's a circle, and it doesn't go one way only from us to the customer.
Right. One of the principles of Agile and of something else.
DevOps.
Well, DevOps, but I was thinking more pilots, more generally. One of the principles is that there's no such thing as failure, because should it not be adopted, incorporated, or should it regress, or any of those other sort of things, it's not a failure because you learned something.
Yes, as long as you learn something.
So, so part of the value proposition here is a maturation of the product.
Yes.
Right? Even if things don't get adopted.
Yes.
And
you know what?
yeah.
You are touching in something that it's really, really interesting that we have seen with customers, that it's the lack of documentation or the lack of knowledge properly, like, hey, we haven't done this, or why we present something and it gets discarded. If they don't have that practice, it will come back. And we see that as maturity, or helping them mature, that it's like teams change, the industry, people move around, so you would switch and somebody would come back and say, hey, I have an idea. And it's like, hey, we tried that before, and this was the reason why maybe the business wasn't ready and now it's ready. But it's a way to re-eval and have that context while producing these iterations of the software product, that you have enough context to don't go into battles that you already fought, if you will.
Yeah.
And the best consulting companies are the ones that actually teach a client how to fish.
Yes.
And their goal is to get out of that business completely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it sounds like you are built not a model to permanently embed, right?
Sorry?
When she asked
Yeah,
the question,
that's part of the SouthWorks model.
all right, but
Yeah.
but there's questions on that, which is in sort of DevOps or in general, there's no such thing as done.
Yes.
There's no done. So the real question then is, do you have a setting goal for an organization to basically work their way out of working with SouthWorks? And,
Yes.
And how do you set those kind of goals to begin with? Because it doesn't sound like, you talk about the embedding and then we don't know much at first. So how do you set sort of the expectation that we're going to be here till you get to here, and what does here look like?
And that's why we always start with like, okay, we need 3 months to work with you and start producing stuff to set the baseline. And what we've seen in practical experience can go two ways. One is like, this is our baseline. There are things that we would love to happen, and we can say, okay, it would take 6 months, 12 months to get there, and then we shake hands and move on. And there are others in which our customers don't know that something is wrong, and it's really hard to explain what's broken, right? So we prototype the things and build the knowledge around to say like, okay, here you have an example of how to deal with this situation. This is the way you should evolve it. We can help you evolve it, or here is, take it. And they might say, that's great, but now I have this problem, right? Or that's great, move on. We try to be pretty transparent on the assessment because that's our definition of success. So I wouldn't go in and say, hey, we will, reduce the number of issues that you have if I don't know how many issues you have. It's not the same thing if you are being bombarded every day with 1,000 notifications to somebody that gets 5. So I don't want to make promises that I cannot keep. So our idea is to explore from the ground up, like not by, coming up with an ideal, this is a solution to all of your problems, and then drive a sort of roadmap and say like, okay, here you have something that it's working, that it's not like, hey, in the traditional consulting world, that would be an assessment or an evaluation that would turn into a PowerPoint that would be, sure, now give me $1 million, 12 months, and come back later. Our idea is that from the embed is to build something that it's actionable, that it's hands-on, that it's working, and then offer like, hey, we can help you evolve this, or here is the instruction manual. Go ahead and, keep it yourself. That's the goal, to maximize that idea of independence. And as Guy said, like, the role of the scout is to help organizations mature and put the technology to work to them. It's a maturity thing that oftentimes in the traditional consulting will be like, sure, I have 1,000 slides PowerPoint. I feel smarter, but it feels years away, like all these Horizon 3, 5, whatever. And on the other side, it's like, we want to be tactical enough so you feel that evolving and truly an agile way of working. So, and we believe that AI has opened up the game to really prototype fast and show value. And if it doesn't get adopted, it's like, sure, we've learned something. We won't do this again. We'll find the solution.
Yeah. This sounds very similar to the TAM program. Is this something that is built in, or is it an add-on to your service?
It's a great question. We started piloting this with customers by saying like, hey, we will show you what we are capable of if we embed and figure out the problems. We have had, and mostly when implementing AI, and I'm not talking about building chatbots, I'm talking about like putting AI to work for infrastructure work or software development practices in general, that it was this deadlock when it comes to decisions. I don't know, should I use Copilot, Claude, Sonnet 3.5, or it's codec better, and everybody pitching thousands of lights and stuff like that. And that was the angle in which we started building this as maybe the entry point. There might be a longer term project, something that needs to be built. There might be a managed service that, it was that you lack the capability for maintaining or doing the upkeep of your system. And what you really needed was a smaller team looking into the constant evolution, modernization, because as you said, there is no done in DevOps. Or maybe it's that you just needed, somebody to break the analysis paralysis for the decision. So it's kind of an entry point that we decided to turn into a practical activation of the technology. So it's hands-on. And oftentimes we recommend this to our customers because a trend that we are seeing in their organization, or when they pitch a problem and they come to us with like, hey, let's build a 2-year roadmap for AI adoption. We have all these 1,000 tools and we never try them. I read an article that it might be good and I'm like, let's try 3 months with something that it's more flexible, more agile, and nimbler, and see how your organization adopts to that. And when we can figure out how the next 12 months would look like.
So it's a limited term engagement, and you can figure it out from there based on customer adaptability and usability.
So I like the wedge idea, like the companies like trying to figure out all the tools and should I use MCP, should I do whatever, and and that idea of like in embed personally, let me try it out. But then the counter to that is my concern as an organization for these things being dangerous and unsafe. Like I haven't thought through an MCP architecture, particularly in a bank or a place where there's zero trust, OCC regulated zero trust compliance. So it seems like a little bit of a dichotomy there in that I'm going to help you get started because you're all over the map. Nobody really knows what to do. But the same token, I'm not sure I want these outside people implementing MCP or sort of agentic type processes in a world where we still haven't figured out what that looks like in our world.
And
does that make sense?
Yes, definitely, because that's the key to why it's embedded. What it's embedded inside of the organization. Because one of the patterns that we observe, even when pitching our own AI projects to bigger enterprises, it's that concern that, you design, you build a castle in the air where all these MCP servers will exist and everything will be connected to the internet, and you have all these fantastic models looking at your source code. And then all of a sudden, comes the InfoSec guy, the CIO, the CISO, whatever name you choose to it, and it's like, 90% of it won't happen, right? We haven't seen that, level of pushback when it comes to working integrated. We have seen it from like the outside pitch. So this is also an answer to that it's like, sure, we have seen companies saying like, hey, sure, you can use GitHub Copilot and all these models or bring codecs and then it's dead on arrival, right? Like it won't happen. So that's why for us, for this model to work and to become the real fire starter for the evolution of the organization, it needs to be embedded. It needs to be sitting on that table where, OpenAI is a no-no, or DeepSeek, no way we are going to rely on a Chinese model, or we want to operate with Bedrock, or we want our own private deployment and I can get 1,000 Blackwells if I want. So those conversations that you are not exposed unless you're sitting at the table are crucial for pushing the envelope forward.
Right, but it sounds like you're offering this as a service. So are you bringing some kind of pre-programmed building blocks to the table, and are those getting reviewed by these clients, or are you kind of greenfield building as you go into a new client each time?
So we bring the knowledge, the experience, and the expertise of doing it. We found that with AI, there is little to no value to bring actual source code, because for the InfoSec process and all those things, even though if it's AI generated and such, they feel more comfortable on a greenfield. Okay. And seeing, how the building is coming together floor after floor gives them more confidence than, sure, I'm bringing an agent that will take care of
Yeah.
solving.
Everyone loves a black box.
Everybody loves a black box until you meet with a CISO or somebody that says like, sure, open the kimono, and it's like, yeah, that's not possible.
They get pwned. Everybody loves a black box too.